So recently we met up with one of our subscribers, Keely, shout out to you, and she asked us what were some key tips that we would give to a beginner videographer who is just starting out. As a beginner, you might watch all this amazing work from these videographers and filmmakers who have a lot more experience than you, and it's easy to feel discouraged. You see this amazing work and here you are, struggling to even learn your camera settings. You feel like there's no way that you will ever get to that level. Now, I'm here to tell you that it's completely normal to feel like that, because when we first started back in 2019 as complete beginners, we felt the exact same way. Hey guys, if you're new here, my name is Jono. I'm an ex-lawyer turned full-time filmmaker based in Sydney, Australia. On this channel, we talk about filmmaking, self-development, and entrepreneurship. So let's get into the 10 tips. Tip 1 is to start with 3 items of gear. Gear is talked about way too much on YouTube, so I'm just gonna cut straight to the chase. You really only need 3 bare essentials when you're just starting out. Number 1 is a camera body. Number 2 is a lens. You can even just start with a kit lens that comes with your camera body when you're just starting out. And number 3 is I'd recommend a small little aperture light. And this should set you back only about $600. It's just enough gear that firstly won't make you feel too overwhelmed, because when you're just starting out, your brain is going to be filled with a lot of new information. And secondly, it's just enough to be able to create some really good looking content. Here is some social media content that we shot for some local businesses and some home videos using the exact gear list that I just mentioned. As you can see, you can get some pretty good stuff just with these 3 items of gear. Once you get a bit more experience and you start attracting paid gigs, you can then reinvest some of the money that you earn into building out your gear list. Tip number 2 is don't wait. Once you've got the 3 items that we talked about in step 1, don't wait. Start creating your first video. And I don't mean taking your camera into the backyard and just taking a bunch of random clips to test out the camera. I mean, go into your backyard or wherever in your house or even in your local community and actually try to capture footage that tells a story. This could simply mean just documenting the process of how your coffee machine makes coffee or your dog having fun in various places around the house. A piece of content that someone can watch and actually recognize that there is some sort of story, there's some sort of purpose behind this content. This will actually help you get into the rhythm of being a creator and start allowing you to practice at home. Tip number 3 is to practice your camera settings until they become second nature. Every beginner knows how important it is to learn the camera settings, your ISO, aperture, shutter speed, frame rates, and your resolution. But a lot of beginners don't realize how important it is to actually keep practicing these settings until they become second nature. Because it's all well and good to know how to dial in your camera settings and get perfect exposure when you have all the time in the world. But imagine you're in a situation where a bride is walking down the aisle and seeing her husband for the very first time, or a client is on an extremely tight schedule and needs footage shot extremely quickly. As a videographer, you can be placed in some pretty high pressure environments. And when that time comes, I see so many beginners completely mess up their camera settings because they can't think straight. So how do we do this? Well, firstly, go learn your camera settings. Watch our video on this topic. I will leave a link in the description box down below. And the second step is to actually practice your camera settings by placing yourself in these high stress environments by working for free. This will allow you to get familiar with your camera settings super quickly without the pressure of charging. So even if you mess up at times, there's not going to be too much of a consequence because you're not getting paid in the first place. Think of it as kind of like your way of accelerating your learning. For example, we did this when we were beginners by offering to shoot our friend's wedding for free when they didn't have the budget to hire a videographer, and also doing content shoots for local businesses on the weekends. There's no shortcut or hack for this. You just have to put in the work and practice. Tip number 4 is to become a master at using natural light. When you're starting out, you're not gonna have the money to buy a good quality light. I know we didn't, but you can still create some really amazing work with natural light. Even to this day, a lot of the weddings that we shoot, we just use natural light for most of the day. And shooting with natural light really comes down to 2 situations. Number 1 is shooting outdoors. When you're shooting outdoors, try to plan your shoots during sunrise or the early morning and sunset. This is called golden hour, and it's the period where you're likely going to get the best looking footage. Try to avoid shooting on really sunny days where there's a harsh sunlight directly above your subject, because this will cause a lot of shadows and it's not going to result in a very flattering image. You can shoot during midday if it's a cloudier day, because the clouds essentially act as a massive softbox that helps you diffuse the sunlight, which results in softer light. But the general rule of thumb is try to avoid really harsh sunlight as best you can. Number 2 is shooting indoors. When you're shooting indoors, the main rule that you need to remember here is to always try and shoot near a large light source. So when it's indoors, that's usually just a window. So lighting up the subject with the window light from the side. And as a beginner, that's pretty much the 2 rules that you really need to know. Tip number 5, bad footage is forgivable, but bad audio is unforgivable. You can have the most amazing footage in the world, but if your audio makes people want to take off their headphones, then it's unlikely that people are going to watch it all the way to the end. Now, when it comes to recording audio as a beginner, I would really just be concerned with these 2 main methods. Number 1, on-camera audio, and number 2, on-person audio. There are a few more advanced ways of recording audio, such as plugging into a soundboard or using a boom pole, but as a beginner, I would just focus on these 2 methods first. On-camera audio is when you have the microphone plugged into the camera, and then the microphone is usually mounted on the top of the camera. This is great for a lot of those run and gun shoots where you might not have time to properly mic people up, or you just want to capture some really candid, raw moments.
Yeah, I can't wait to marry her. So, and also being surrounded by loved ones, and I got the best video and photography company with me, so.
The downside to this method is that the audio quality can be impacted by a lot more external factors, such as background noises. As a general rule of thumb, the closer the microphone is to the audio source that you want to record, the better the quality will be. And since for this method, the microphone is usually on the camera itself, it means that it's generally a bit further away from your audio source, which means that the audio quality is not always going to be the most clear. The second method is on-person audio, which generally records better quality audio because the microphone is closer to the audio source compared to if it was mounted on a camera. For on-person audio, you can use either a lav mic or a wireless mic that you can clip onto someone's clothing. And so if you're looking for the best quality audio, I would generally opt to mic someone up if I have the time. Tip number 6, you're not just an editor, you're a storyteller. For a lot of beginner videographers just starting out, the editing stage is usually the hardest part for them. Everyone wants to just be out on shoots getting all the cool looking footage. But editing is where the magic happens. This is the stage where the story comes to life, but because it's often neglected by beginners, even if they get a bunch of really amazing footage, they still struggle to create an engaging video at the end. So here would be my 2 key tips when it comes to editing. Number 1 is firstly just pick an editing software to use. That could be Final Cut Pro, Premiere, DaVinci, even iMovie. And number 2, always keep this question in mind when you're editing. What is the story or message that I want to communicate to the viewer? Once you adopt this mindset, once you keep this question at the front and center of your mind, it will dictate every decision that you make in the editing process. The music that you choose, the pacing of the edit, how you cut your clips, and the final shots that you actually include in your video. Tip number 7 is to prioritize making small improvements over time. Focus on getting better one aspect of filmmaking at a time. That could be, for example, if you're just starting out, just learning your camera settings really well. And then you can move on to something like learning how to use natural light. And then you can learn about how to record audio. Just take it one step at a time and make small improvements gradually. And over a sustained period of time of doing this, you're gonna recognize a massive transformation. And if you really love this, I know you won't give up, because this process of learning and improving is going to feel like play for you. And before you know it, your work is gonna start getting to the level of the videographers and filmmakers that you once looked up to. Tip number 8 is to reference the best. This ties in with the previous tip about not feeling discouraged when you look at the work of more experienced videographers and filmmakers that you look up to. Sit down and really dissect their work. Try and learn what exactly was it that made their video so good. What we oftentimes do is if we see a really amazing video, we'll copy the link of that video into a spreadsheet that will build out over time. And in that spreadsheet, we'll just include a few pointers of what are the things that we wanted to reference from that video. Did they use a voiceover, or did they interview multiple people and use those interviews to draw out a compelling storyline? Specific shots and angles did they get, and how can we replicate that in our own work? Be like a scientist when you watch a really good video. Don't just watch it and admire it. Really break it down and try to dissect it. The more specific you are, the better, because this will show that you're really starting to understand what goes behind making great content. It wasn't until we started adopting this process of really dissecting reference videos and applying it to our own work that our filmmaking skills really improved. Tip number 9 is to recognize that video creation and storytelling are one of the most important skills that you can learn right now. The world is currently moving towards video. YouTube is the second most visited site in the world behind Google, and the consumption of video content is increasing at a rapid rate. These days, brands and businesses are hungry for content, and they're desperately searching for people who have the skills to create engaging content that helps boost their brand online. Back then, thousands and thousands of people would flock to these small towns in the hopes of finding gold so that they become rich. But the ones who actually did really well were the ones who sold the shovels that allowed people to dig for the gold. And it's the same thing now with the internet. The internet is now at scale, it is mature, and millions of brands and businesses are flocking online so that they can attract new customers. And we as video creators, storytellers, are the ones selling the shovels. We're the guys who have the skill sets and the tools to help these businesses and brands get online and grow their presence and help them dig for gold. So keep this in your mind every time you feel discouraged and want to give up. Know that you are currently on the path to learning one of the most in-demand skills out there right now. So tip number 10, this last tip has literally changed our lives, and that's to read self-development books. Because you can have the most amazing camera skills in the world, but if you don't have the right mindset, the right habits, it's still going to be very hard for you to find success. The reason we have managed to reach even up to this point in our filmmaking / entrepreneurial journey is owed not just to our passion for filmmaking, because your passion for filmmaking is only going to take you so far, but it's also our dedication to self-improvement and constantly getting out of our comfort zone. Simple habits and ways of living, such as waking up early, being consistent and applying yourself every single day, eating healthy, exercising regularly. These things seem small and immaterial, but they make all the difference. We would not have reached where we are today without realizing the importance of these things. And a lot of these things were learned from the books that we read. And as I mentioned in a previous video, the content that you consume influences your way of thinking, and your way of thinking ultimately impacts on your behavior. So those are our top 10 tips for any beginner who's looking to start their videography journey. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found this video valuable, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. As I mentioned before, on this channel, we talk about filmmaking, self-development, and entrepreneurship. If you are interested, we also have an email newsletter, link in the description box down below, where we go a little bit more deeper into our journey and share more tips and insights. And that's about it from me, guys. I will see you in the next video.